Hey guys, it's Kate from Kromatone Cosplay, and today I'm going to be showing you what makes a good sewing kit, what I use on a daily basis for my sewing projects, and some different things that you can add into that to just accentuate what you're doing. Alright, so I'm going to start with boxes. Now, you can use whatever feels right for you. I'm going to show you some different sizes that work best for me. I'm going to start with this little guy. This is just a little makeup bag that I had, a lovely Kat Von D, and it's just a zipper pouch. But I use it mostly for if I'm traveling with cosplays or taking my stuff on the road with me, or even if I'm going on a long trip, I will put some of my tools in this that I think are super essential, and I'll take that with me. Second off is just like a little pencil case that you had probably in elementary school. I know I did. Now with this, it's just a little plastic guy. And this is good for if you're using bigger stuff or if you have one part of your house that you are keeping sewing stuff in and you want it to be easy access or the stuff that you use the most. Now the last one I'm going to show you is this guy, and this is the Big Daddy. It is a hardware box that I got from a Home Depot, and it's got all sorts of good compartments and a tray in here for extra stuff. And now I took this all through college. This is great if you are going on long-term trips, if you're going to be on set for anything, or just for storing all of your extra bigger tools in your sewing room. I'm going to get these out of the way. Alright, now I'm going to direct you guys right over here to my core stuff. So I have this stuff in my sewing box every single day, and I use this stuff every single day on every single project. So I like to keep pins, and I just use a regular box of pins. I like the multicolored round head straight pins. You can get some other kinds of pins as well. I like to use these flathead button pins when I'm laying out patterns because they don't make the pattern or the fabric buckle just as much as, say, the round head pin does. Basically, this just comes from trial and error. Do what feels right to you. Now with pins, I generally keep mine in a box, but if you get adventurous, you can use a little tomato pin cushion. Probably everybody's grandma's had one of these. Those are really good. Or if you prefer something a little more streamlined, something flat, or I know a lot of people that just use a stuffed animal if you've got something to spare. Alright, so along with pins, we have to have needles. Now I have two kinds of needles here. I have my hand sewing needles, and right now I have these in my handy dandy little circular needle dispenser. Now they come like this. You can also buy them in the cardboard packs and refill this, which I just like keeping this around because it's easy access. You can also use a felt envelope like this one. Mine's a little messy right now, but you can keep your needles nice and organized like that, unlike I am, especially if you want to leave thread in them. Another set of needles are essential are your sewing machine needles. Now this size are for my industrial machine, which I mostly use when I'm at work, but these also work well for my industrial machine at home. All sewing machines will tell you exactly what size needle they need. These are a size 16. These are a really heavy duty industrial sewing machine needle, and they come in a pack like this. Next, you're going to want scissors. Now I have 3 pairs of scissors on this side, as you can see, and these are essentials. So I've got another pair of scissors over here. We'll get to that in a minute. You definitely want a good pair of fabric scissors. You just kind of, again, trial and error, find what feels right for you. I prefer a longer blade, but these ones are my everydays. And you also want a pair of paper scissors. Now, if you don't sew and you have somebody who sews in the house and they say, don't use my fabric scissors for paper, there's a reason for that. Paper scissors are the blade gets dulled a different way than fabric scissors do. And so fabric scissors are just for fabric, and if they get used on paper, they dull out really, really quickly. And it's really frustrating when you are a seamstress. Now, these two are very different, so I don't have these labeled, but every once in a while I will have a set of scissors that looks very similar, so I always label them to make sure that I'm using paper for paper and fabric for fabric. Now, I've got these little guys. These are the kind of snips that I like to use. They are by Singer, and they are spring-loaded, so they go super, super quick, and they have a little loop on them so that I can use them while I'm hand sewing, or if I just need to use them quick fire if I'm pulling threads off of a project. But they are spring-loaded, so they snip, snip real quick. You can just use a smaller pair of embroidery scissors or a smaller pair of scissors, whatever works for you. This is what I like to use. And then seam ripper. Seam ripper, pretty self-explanatory. Always have one in your kit. I have a few that are floating around. This one right now is my favorite. It's got a really ergonomic grip on it. And it also has a cap, which for me is super important. I stab myself with these a lot, accidentally. Okay. Also, you're gonna need a measuring tape. And measuring tape is good for just about everything. In sewing, you're going to use it for making patterns, you're going to use it for measuring people for fittings, you're going to use it for measuring patterns, you're going to use it for just about everything. So this is always good to keep in your kit. They come in a lot of fun colors. As you can see, pink is kind of a common theme in my box, which kind of happened on accident, but kind of not really. While we're on measuring, this is a seam gauge. Now, a lot of people like to use these, a lot of people don't like to use them. I use this primarily when I'm doing hem fittings. So I will sit and put this on the floor and kind of measure how far up or down I want the hem. This is also really good if you need a couple of different seam sizes and they're either not marked on your machine or you need to kind of keep track of it. It's metal. They do make these in plastic. I prefer the metal ones because they don't get bent out of shape as easily, and if they do, you just bend them back. And this one has a little slider on it, so you can kind of remember where you need your seam to be. I'm going to move on to my marking tools. Now I have two Sharpies in my box. I use these for pattern making mostly, but every once in a while if I'm using a heavy fur, I will use the Sharpies to mark. I have a red one and a black one. They come in really, really handy. Also, you're going to want a regular ballpoint pen, just for the obvious. If you need to mark a pattern, if you need to mark your fabric. I wouldn't recommend using a pen for marking fabric too often unless it's heavy duty. And a pencil. Now, a pencil, never mark your fabric with a pencil. A lot of people don't realize that it will not come out in the wash. I don't know if you ever got pencil on your clothing when you were in school, but the graphite does not come out. It will not wash out of your fabric. It will not wash out of anything. So use this very sparingly. I use it to make notes on my paper patterns, or if I'm just doing a mock-up with a scrap fabric, I'll use it on that. Now what you can use on your fabric is tailor chalk. Now mine has been very, very loved. As you can see, this one actually came in a holder that is also a sharpener on the back, which works okay. It keeps the edge kind of nice and sharp, but I actually don't end up using the sharpener as much as I would like to. But this is really great. It comes in a lot of different colors. I have blue and white, and this is good for marking every fabric because it will wash out, and you can also just brush it out or iron it off. Now coming to the end of the must-haves and kind of going into the if you want to's, safety pins. I keep mine in a little film can because it keeps them together. Some people chain them, but I have safety pins of all shapes and sizes because they come in handy for just about everything. I just like to keep a bunch around. If you don't need them in your sewing kit, that's really up to you. Get those back in there. All right. Now moving on to the advanced and enhancing tools. Let's start at the bottom. These are my pattern weights. I use these when I am either splicing patterns or if I have a fabric that doesn't take pins very well. I will use these to hold down my pattern onto my fabric, or if I'm using a fabric pattern on to cut other fabric, I'll use these to keep that down as well. They're probably each about an ounce, but they do pretty well. They're filled with BBs. You can get them filled with sand. You can get them made out of plastic or metal. I prefer these canvas ones just because they fit better in my box and they're a little easier on the fabrics that I like to use. My cat also likes to steal them. Moving on, I am gonna show you these two things, fray check and a lighter. Now, a fray check is kind of like a very soft, gentle glue that does exactly what it says it will. It will check the frays on your fabric. So if you've got a buttonhole or a piece that is kind of coming unraveled, this is really good to just put a little dab on there and it will keep it from unraveling any further. And a lighter. This is just a standard like smoker's lighter. I use this if I'm using an acrylic or a plastic-based fabric, so like polyester. Using a lighter is really good to keep ribbon from fraying or keep anything that is just sort of a small edge. This will burn or seal that edge for you. All right, now moving on, these are more advanced tools. I have my rotary cutter, just a standard rotary cutter, and my rotary measure. Now, both of these are very different tools. This one I use for pattern grafting, and it's a little Project Runway one, but this is used when you are either pattern making or transferring with carbon paper, and it just makes little teeny dots, and you just use it like this. And it makes little teeny dots all over your paper or your fabric or whatever you're using it on. And then this is a blade, which I use for lightweight fabric or even if I'm cutting lightweight paper. And I do have another blade that I do switch out because I keep the same rule for my scissors that I do for my rotary cutter. I have two separate blades for paper and for fabric. So this has a little lock on it, so the blade doesn't always stay out, which is safety. Safety first, no matter what. And moving on, my last pair of scissors, my pinking shears. Now these have a little zigzag edge on them, and they are for keeping your edges clean, keeping your seams clean, especially for fabrics that tend to unravel very quickly. This will kind of slow that process down. It's also a really fun way to finish your seams, even if your fabric isn't going to unravel quickly, because it gives that little zigzag triangle thing. The only thing I don't like about pinking shears is that they're really difficult to sharpen. So unless you find somebody who does specialty, you basically just have to get another pair once they start to get dull. All right, and now not sewing related, but my essentials for my box. I have the O'Keeffe's Working Hands hand cream because when I'm working on stuff, I hate putting regular lotion on my hands, but my hands get super dry when I am working on stuff. This stuff is great because it doesn't get oily. It just goes on like a little wax and it keeps my hands nice and soft and not cracked, especially in the wintertime. And then my handy dandy hand sanitizer and my chapstick, because when I'm working with people, I don't want to get myself sick and I don't want to get them sick. And then my chapstick, because you gotta have your chapstick. All right. Now, if you have any questions or want to hear more or want to see more of my sewing tools or my sewing room, put some stuff in the comments below, and we'll see you next time.